Hi, everybody. This is Mike Reno from Loverboy, and you're watching Barside Jive with DC.
Guys, welcome back. Let's welcome Loverboy frontman Mike Reno to Barside Jive. Mike, it's great having you here.
Thank you very much, DC, if I may call you that.
Absolutely. All my friends call me that, so I definitely include you in that group. I'm actually quite honored.
Thank you, sir.
Mike, I just had Rick Emmett from Triumph on the show about a month ago, and he started off the show with a story that he said he thought you were there, where Bunny Carlos actually turned down a session with John Lennon.
Wow.
And yeah, because he had to get back home to do his laundry.
Oh, God. I think it was in Chicago. We were doing something, a show for Mr. Jim Pederick from Survivor. He does a show every year to celebrate all the music he's written, and he does it for a charity, of course. I think Rick was there, I was there, Bunny was there, and he was telling us that story. I think we all looked at him like, what are you, nuts?
Yeah, totally missed out, didn't he?
John Lennon, wow. And you know, yeah, wow. Boy, do we miss John Lennon, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember where you were when you first heard about John Lennon passing? I remember like it was yesterday. There's this hotel that's a really funky hotel down by the ocean in Vancouver called the Sylvia Hotel. I was sitting there having a beer, and it came on this little television in 1980, and we were just getting started as a band. We just put out a record, and we were home for Christmas, and it boom. And I looked at it, and I went, oh my God, how horrible is that? I remember like it was yesterday.
Wow. I mean, all of us were raised on Beatle music. I mean,
absolutely. That's kind of why I got in the game.
Yeah.
I was 11 years old, and Ed Sullivan, you know, back then it was a black and white TV. You were lucky to have one back then.
Right.
Yeah, you know, 3 channels. The major networks were just, you know, getting started.
Right.
And Ed Sullivan started bringing bands on, and he brought on the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. But when the Beatles came on, I said to my parents, that's what I want to do right there. And I was delivering papers in the morning and selling papers after school. So my brother taught me how to make money. He says, it's nice to have some walking around money. And he taught me what to do. So I bought a set of drums when I was 11, you know what I mean? And I had my own money. I sent a letter to the Beatles saying I should be the drummer for the Beatles. This Ringo guy's not cutting it. Sorry, Ringo.
Oh, yeah. You didn't mean anything by it.
No, he's going to hate me.
Well, so Paul didn't call you up and so, yeah, we want you in.
I did not get a return letter, DC, I'm afraid. I did not. I'm still a little disappointed by it.
Yeah, I thought this story was going to develop into something where you had to turn them down.
I know. It would have been a great story. Not the case.
Yeah. Wow. You've had a real lengthy career. I guess you realize that, don't you, Mike? And you've been the front man for this iconic band that has seen so much success. And when you guys took off, what was it, about 1979, 1980, you really took off. And looking back, what do you see as your biggest accomplishment during all that time?
You mean for the whole 40 years or for the first
for the whole
time?
40 years? What stands out to you?
You know what a decision that I made years ago when we were first putting the band together, before we had the whole band together, I said to Paul, and Paul and I were, you know, we started the band, and I said, we got to find the guys that we're going to stick with for a long time, you know, like that's what counts more than even musicianship is camaraderie. And then I said, we should put everybody on the same pay scale. Everybody makes the same. I don't know where I come up with this idea, but it was one of the best ideas I think I ever had, because it kept the band together. Everybody did well. There was no, I hate the singer because he's making all the money thing, because that happens in a lot of bands, right? One or two guys make all the money and everybody else doesn't. So, and we didn't even think really about money at the beginning. We were just happy to be able to do it, but I wanted the band to stay together. And that was one of my I think one of my best ideas ever. And I think that's one of, you know, accomplishment wise, that was good. We accomplished, we're still together, other than we lost a guy to a boating accident, one of our best beginner. You know, he started with the band in 1980, 79, pardon me. And Scott Smith, of course, is dearly missed today. He went boating and got dragged into the ocean on a lousy wave and ended up never being found. But you know, this is the life of sailing, you know, and he died doing something he wanted, but we really miss him. So keeping the band together, like all the other four guys are together. Our newest guy's been with the band over 20 years. You know, we believe in the camaraderie of the band. The band is tight. When we hit the stage, we all know what we're doing. We know where we're going. Mm-hmm. We know what's going to happen. And that's a nice feeling, you know. Mm-hmm. It's like a winning football team, but forever. Not, you know, not just for a year,
right?
Forever.
Right.
And that was pretty good. Writing the songs that are still popular today, that's a huge accomplishment, in my opinion, because even yesterday I was driving around, a song came on the radio and it just sounded great to me. I mean, it still sounded good. So we had some of the best in the business right off the bat, and we didn't even know they were the best in the business, because you know, they were just starting out too. This is like Bob Rock, Mike Fraser. Mike Fraser now does all the AC/DC albums. Bob Rock does everybody. Bruce Fairbairn was huge. He did everybody as well. Passed away sadly, but the whole team right off the bat turned out to be kind of a winning team, and I'm very proud of that.
Right. You said that you started out with a drum kit. Wasn't it a Ludwig kit?
That was my third set.
Okay.
I started with a set of English Capri, and most people would never heard of this English Capri. They even had live hide skins on them. You know, the heads are usually plastic now.
Right.
I had them. They were live like animal heads, like skin. That's why they call them skins. And I progressed to a set of Stewarts. And then when I got really serious about it, I went out and bought a double set of white maple Ludwigs, which I loved.
Yeah. So you transitioned from a drummer to a frontman, which is kind of odd to me that you would make that transition, right? Because you can sing. You can sing.
Just a sec, Mister. You know who else was a drummer?
Frontman that was a drummer?
Uh-huh.
Steven Tyler?
Yes, sir. And Mick Jagger. He was kind of a drummer.
No way.
Yo, he loved the drums at the beginning.
I did not know that, Mike.
There's a few. Phil Collins, of course, but
right.
You know.
Right.
But the you know, what's funny is I think that gives me timing in the song, in the singing, you know, the timing.
Sure.
The timing is as, you know, people say you got pretty good timing, you know, for a singer.
No, I can see it. I can see it totally being advantageous. What I'm saying is that usually my experience is the drummer, he doesn't want to be the front man. He doesn't want to.
I didn't either.
You didn't?
No.
Not at all.
I was like saying, there's no way I'm going up front. But this band I was with, when I was starting out, after a few years, they said, listen, everybody's got a front man now. There's like Led Zeppelin's out there, Deep Purple. You know, there's all these bands, Rolling Stones. They got a front man. He's running around getting the audience going crazy. He says, we want you to go up front. And, you know, and I'm going, there is absolutely no way I'm going up front. I was just like scared shitless. And I just said, I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden I tried it, and it was a little nerve-wracking at first because there's no drums and cymbals in front of you. So, you got to find something to do with your hands, and, and you're right out front. It's like, it was a big deal change. And then it kind of caught on. And then I realized you can have a little bit of work in the crowd is kind of fun for me. The personality starts to come out a little bit. And it took a little getting used to, but then I kind of caught on.
Wow. Well, you caught on in a big way, Mike. In a big way. Let me say this, that I've got to know, what was your primary motivation for playing music? Was it you foresaw this big career, in music, having the lifestyle that you wanted to have, or was it something else?
It's all I ever did. It's not like I did a whole bunch of things and said music is where I'm at. Occasionally I would get a job so I could get enough money to buy a van or a PA. This is, going back to the years when you could load everything into a van and do concerts in and around your hometown.
Right.
Right off the bat, when I was young, I was in my brother's band, and my dad drove us around pulling a U-Haul trailer to these little shows in and around where we lived.
Right.
And he took tickets at the door and would bounce people out of there if they were too crazy. And I remembered I was 13 years old. They could barely see me over the drums. And they gave me a drum solo. And then during the break in the show, we'd sit in the back in the car in my dad's Oldsmobile with the big fins on the back, one of those old Oldsmobiles. And Dad would pop a few beers for the guys in the band. He passed me when I'm 13. I took a little sip of it and passed it to the bass player. I said I didn't want anything to do with that. But this is all I ever did. And so right off the bat, and then once in a while I would get a job to earn some money. But it was just, I didn't even think about doing the job forever. I just wanted to earn a bit of money to buy some more equipment.
Wow.
And so it's all I've ever done. Really, literally, I could tell people that's all I've ever done is music.
Wow. Yeah. Who was the major influence on your career? I mean, was there a particular band that you wanted to emulate?
My favorite band was Free.
Okay, great band, yeah.
And Humble Pie.
Oh, yeah.
And groups like that. I was totally into that kind of thing. The soulful singing prowess of Paul Rogers just completely blew me away. He had this raspy soul, and it was just the best. He didn't oversing, he just sang enough. He's the coolest. It's still the coolest singer around, and he's a natural talent, a fabulous singer, great guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's great bands you just mentioned. Yeah, Free, they were awesome.
And then, for those who don't remember, Free became Bad Company.
Oh yeah.
And then, that's not a bad way to go too. But I also loved Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple. And then I got into groups like Chicago.
Oh yeah.
And Chicago were really a different band, but I loved Peter Cetera's voice. I couldn't believe how he could sing. And I still have a hard time believing how he can sing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's got one of these, it's like a phenomenon, natural phenomenon type of voice, right? It's like, how does he sing like that? And then I got into Creedence. I thought they were starting to get pretty good. And, those are the kind of things I grew up with. And then I even got into Three Dog Night, different kind of groups like that.
Right.
Have you ever Bane, and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I remember driving 5 hours from a little town I grew up in British Columbia to Vancouver to get there early enough to be the first guy in the Coliseum, which is the hockey rink, to see Chicago. And I ran right to the front and I stood right in front of the bass player because I knew that was Peter Cetera. And I knew he was going to be standing right there. And I was looking up at him. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And they played it. I just went, oh my God, he can sing just like that. So it wasn't like a studio effect. He really sings like that.
Right. Wow. Did you ever meet him?
I met him not too long ago, a couple of years ago. I met him. I went to one of his shows down in California. And he called me up on stage. One of his guys worked with us temporarily when our keyboard player couldn't travel.
Uh-huh.
for a particular reason or another. So we had another keyboard player, a friend of ours from Nashville, play keyboards, and he had all the stuff that we needed in his keyboard. And then he got a job with Peter Cetera. And when they came through California, he called me up. He said, "You want to come to the show as my guest?" So my wife and I are sitting in the front, maybe 8-10 rows back, and all of a sudden Peter Cetera invites me up on stage, and I tell you, I nearly crapped my pants. Oh, really. And I went up and sang "Working for the Weekend." And,
Oh, wow.
and he was playing all these ballads, which I thought was kind of funny. But, he plays a lot of ballads, right?
Right.
And as I'm walking back off the stage after singing "Working for the Weekend," people in the audience were going, "Get back up there and rock this place a little bit." So, as he was kind of putting him to sleep. But what a fantastic talent he is. Just a great singer and a great songwriter. And wow, yeah. He wasn't even playing bass that night. He was just singing. Man, can he sing? Fantastic. I think he might have retired too, which is kind of sad. I enjoyed seeing him 2 years ago too.
Wow. So the audience wants you to pick up the tempo a little bit.
Yeah, the audience, "Get back there, rock us, Reno." I thought, come on, knock it off. This is his show. And it was just kind of a funny moment as I'm walking back. It's just a few people in the front.
Yeah. Of course, you weren't under any pressure at all.
No, I still, I get very nervous when I get called up on stage like that, because if they ask me to sing a Chicago song, I'm going to go. I can make up my own words. I never know the words to songs other than my own songs. They say, "You must know a million songs." And I go, "No, I know 18 and they're all my own songs."
Yeah. Now, wait a minute. I got to ask you, are you still singing from memory, or do you got those big monitors that you're having to use?
I don't need the monitors that everybody else uses, because I just read the lips of the front row. I know. I'm a lip reader. I remember most of them. I'll tell you what, after this break, I might have to brush up on the lyrics before I get back out there. I mean, we've been off for 8 months now.
Yeah.
This is the longest time I've had off in my entire life. I just don't ever remember being off this long, because we work pretty much constant since we started. Crazy, huh?
Oh, yeah. Hey guys, you are watching Barside Jive with my guest, singer, songwriter, musician, and frontman, Mike Reno of the Canadian rock band Loverboy.
Yahoo!
Mike, you guys formed Loverboy in '79, I think it was.
This is when we started getting all the members together. When we recorded our first album in '79. It wasn't released till '80, but we recorded it in '79 and part of '80.
Right. So it was primarily you and Paul, though, that was, hey, we got to have a band, right?
Yeah, well, Paul and I didn't even really want to get in a band, because I'd left a band in Ontario, Canada, that I played with for 3 years, and I was not really into being in a band right then. And Paul had left a band in an unpleasant way, and so he wasn't really into being in a band. And we just ended up meeting in Calgary in the dead of winter, which it's kind of like being in Colorado. It's cold, right?
Yeah.
And so we just ended up talking. The first night we wrote a song. It was on our first album called "Always on My Mind." We wrote it in the first hour that we met. And he says, "That was pretty easy." And I go, "Yeah, well, I've had that idea going in my head." And he said, "That's cool. It's cool. Let's keep at this." And so I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to head out. Maybe I'll pop out and see you tomorrow," kind of thing. And it was just a low key, no pressure type thing. And we kept at it until we both looked at each other one day and said, "We got some songs here. This is interesting. This is an interesting concept," because I think none of us really wanted to be in a band, but after writing these songs, we looked at each other and says, we got to get a band together. This is, and so we did. And the first person to join was Doug Johnson, our keyboard player. He was he was in Calgary at the same time, played with another band, and we just we tried out about 18 drummers, but Paul knew right from the beginning that he wanted Matt, our drummer today. That's who he wanted to play, but they'd had a bit of a shady passed. He was in a band with him before, and it wasn't great. The mood wasn't great. So he says, "You got to ask him because I don't even want to talk to him." I said, "I'm too nervous to talk to Matt." So I had to talk to Matt and talk him into coming down to rehearsal. And he says, "Oh, I don't want to do that." And finally, he came down and he said, "Okay, that was cool." We played all these. We showed him how to what these songs were like, and he started drumming them. And Paul said to me later, he went, "That's the way I want these drums to sound in this band." So I knew. But then he was very reticent about coming back. He said, "I don't think I think so." I said, "Come on, just come on back." He goes, "I can't do it. I can't. Maybe Thursday I can come down." I said, "Okay, come on down Thursday." We had this rehearsal hall. He finally came down, and then he started realizing these songs were pretty good. And and he took his time, and then we started playing some shows around British Columbia, and it started to gel. And it took us a while to find our bass player too. But Paul and I used to go see bands, and the leader of the band would go, "Oh shit, Reno and Dean are here to steal one of my musicians," and they just freaked out, right? And it was kind of true. I never really looked at it that way until later.
Right.
But we were looking for a bass player, so we'd go around and look at bands, and it took us a while to find the right guy. We found the guy just because of his style. He just had some really good stage presence.
Right.
And he was playing with a band, a famous Canadian female singer named Lisa Del Bello. And she went on to do all kinds of fun recordings with different people like Boss Skaggs and Toto. And she was turned into a major session singer as well. But anyway, she had a band, and it was a smoking band, and we stole the bass player off Lisa Del Bello. Thank you, Lisa. I hope you're not mad at me still.
You guys were totally scouting.
We were scouting. That's exactly what we were doing.
Yeah. That's great. So you ended up with Scott Smith on bass.
That's right.
You guys, that was the original lineup, right? Paul and you, Doug and Matt.
Doug, Matt,
and Scott.
And that was that lineup was unbreakable for 20 years.
Yeah. Wow.
That was a big shock for us when we lost Scotty, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And he was my best friend as well over the years. So we did everything together. We did a lot of sailing together. We did a lot of concerts together. We hung out. We used to get rooms right beside each other so we could have the door open and just hang out, Being on the road's hard enough, but if you got a good friend with you, it's a lot easier.
Right.
So we were the best. That was a tough one for us. It took a lot out of us for sure.
How did Scott's death affect you guys as a band?
Well, we were basically, as far as I was concerned, we were going to be finished. The one thing that made me rethink the whole thing was all the letters we got from people saying, "You can't let this completely end the band. The band has got to come back. The band has got to survive." When all these people send in letters and stuff, it kind of made me rethink the whole thing, because the guys were leaving it up to me because I was so tight with Scott, and they figured it. They didn't even want to think about doing anything else. And we put a rehearsal hall together and invited a couple of people over to play with us. And the one guy came from Winnipeg, and he had with him, he walked in the room, he plugged in, and he looked at me and he held up the bass guitar, and I recognized it right off the bat. It was one of Scott's Spectors that he played. And he was a pretty generous guy, Scott. He used to hand stuff out to friends. So he'd given Spider this bass, and I walked over and I hugged him in the bass. And after that, it was pretty much a done deal. It just before he played a note, that was the kind of thing I needed to get back at it. And so we started practicing, and it sounded really good. And it was still tough. The first few shows, I think I even cried during some of the shows. Thank God I was wearing sunglasses. Yeah. But that's the way it was. It was very difficult.
Yeah. We'll just dedicate this little chat of ours today to Scott Smith. How about that?
That's beautiful, DC.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll dedicate it to Scott Smith and his memory. So how did you guys come up with the name Loverboy?
Well, it's still kind of a stupid name. It's just like, God, that's a hard name to live with, especially when you're my age. But I
I
gotta
won't tell
say,
you, you got a lot of fans out there that wouldn't agree at all.
I thought we were really going to get hassled having this name. I really did. But turned out that we didn't get hassled at all. Like I never got any bad reaction to it at all. What happened was we were playing, I remember we were in Calgary. It was the winter. We were watching some movies with the girlfriends. We were getting ready to watch a movie, and me and Paul and our girlfriends, and they were going through Vogue magazine and you know, the magazines the girls like to read.
Oh yeah.
Cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
And I said to Paul, what if we made an attempt to dress nice, nicer than the Doobie Brothers and all the bands that are out right now, and we called ourselves Cover Boy, right? Instead of Cover Girl.
Right.
And I said, we might be able to sell that name, you know? And then, so that kind of stuck with us for one night. Paul had a dream. He dreamt about something, and he called me in the morning and he went, I had this dream. I said, I think, he said, we call ourselves Loverboy instead of Coverboy. And I went, are you kidding? We're going to get this shit kicked out of us. And, you know, I just could imagine it. And I said, that is really, you know, and then I kind of went, it's a really tongue-in-cheek name because, you know, we don't think of ourselves that way. It's just a name. And somehow it just stuck. And even when we played rockin' shows with some serious bands like Kansas and ZZ Top that are all known for their music, and a lot of guys go to these shows, nobody ever hassled us on it. I thought that was one of the mysteries of my life, that nobody hassled us about the name Loverboy, because I thought we were going to get it big time.
No, I think you were reading more into that than there was, because yeah, we when you guys came around, we'd already been listening to like Foghat, Cheap Trick, ZZ Top, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, you know, and Loverboy. It was cool. No one thought a thing about it. One thing that really helped you guys is MTV, because I remember when MTV first came out and you guys were all over it, as I recall.
That's a good memory, because we handed in 3 videos. They weren't even called videos back then. We just handed in 3 performances.
Right.
Recorded us doing, for a weekend, we went to the capital city of New York State, which was Albany and still is, into I think it was the Shrine Theater, and all this lighting and stuff was all set up, and they said, bring a whole bunch of clothes. We're going to shoot for a couple of days. We're going to shoot some songs. And we didn't really know what it was all about. Record company asked us to do it. So we did. And what they did is they took these songs that we videoed. They asked us to change clothes for each song and sing them a bunch of times. And then they ended up doing clips of the band playing live, and they threw silly clips from different movies and things into the clip and edited it all together. And then they ended up throwing 3 of these songs over to MTV the first week they were open. And, you know, and they didn't have enough stuff to play 24 hours, you know, they were a 24-hour music cycle.
Right.
So they just played us like crazy. It was one of those things. It was just perfect, really. Before, we were kind of faceless, like, who are these guys? Nobody really knew what you looked like unless you looked at the album cover. And then, you know, boom, next thing you know, you're all over TV 24 hours a day, heavy rotation. It definitely changed the course of Loverboy for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you bet. Okay, I got to ask you this too. We're going to dig a little deeper into this name thing, because I want to know how Joseph Michael Rynoski became Mike Reno.
Well, ever since, well, when my dad's parents moved from Poland, at the border, their name was changed from Ranowskiewicz. They took the Vich off. You following me?
Yeah.
So then it was Ranowski.
Right.
The whole time we grew up, my brother and I, everyone just called us Reno. I was like, Reno, come on, we're going downtown. Reno, let's do some work. Reno, let's play some songs. Hey, call your brother. Reno, you and your brother come on over to our house tonight. So it was never a big deal. It was just Reno, Reno, Reno. And I remember when I signed a contract with the record company, I think they said, "We'll get Reno in here. He'll sign it." And I signed a different name, and they went, "What the hell is that?" And I says, well, "That's my real name." He goes, "We're changing that right now." He says, "No, we're changing that right now." So record companies basically said, "Reno, it's fantastic." I says, "Well, that's what everybody calls me anyway." So it was not a big step. And that is the truthful answer.
Wow. Very cool. Yeah. Reno's a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Were you guys raised in Calgary? Is that where you grew up?
No, I grew up in the Okanagan Valley, which is where the fruit and all the vineyards are. It would be similar to Spokane, but north.
Okay.
North of Spokane in the Okanagan Valley.
Okay.
It's called little city of Penticton.
Okay.
People can look that up. It's a beautiful place to go in the summer. The winter, everybody snow skis. In the summer, everybody water skis.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So you met Paul. Well, the other guys, you guys met in Calgary?
This is like, yeah, I left the Penticton in the Okanagan. I left there when I was 17. And I went to Calgary and started another band, and I worked with that band for 6 or 7 years. It was a good band. And I'll tell you the name of the band if you promise not to laugh.
Okay.
Spunk.
Spunk. That's
Kinda
cool.
like-
I'm not
So
laughing. I'm not
we-
laughing. I'm internalizing it.
Okay, good. So Spunk was a band that was really popular, and we played all over the place. In Calgary, Alberta, and all through Alberta, bands could play 7 days a week. So it was very competitive. Everybody had a band. Everybody tried hard. The shows were put together. The bars and stuff would be packed with people if you did it right. So we really had a good thing going there. And then I got called to do an album with the recording band, but I had to do it. I had to move to Toronto, and moving to Toronto was kind of a big deal because, moving from Alberta, it's like moving from Colorado to New York City, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I did it, and it was a little nerve-wracking, but it was a step up, and I got into songwriting, and it took me to the next level. One of my first bands was called Morning Glory.
Morning Glory.
Yeah.
So you were in what, 2 or 3 bands before Loverboy?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bands before.
Wow. And which one of those bands stayed together the longest before Loverboy?
Spunk.
Yeah.
That was the Calgary band. I ended up coming back to Calgary to drop my girlfriend off at the time. She wanted to go back to university and get a master's degree in English literature. And I said, I'm going to drop you off and I'm going to go down to Los Angeles and visit my brother and see what the music scene's like down there. And after meeting Paul, I never knew this was going to happen, but I ended up not even going. Paul and I just clicked. And I'd never met Paul before, and Paul had never met me. So it was one of these kind of interesting. This is very interesting. And it's kind of, had we not met that night, you know how you do that 6 degree of separation thing?
Yeah.
Had we not met that night, none of this would have happened, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy sometimes when you really kind of think back how it all got started.
Right. So why do you think that Loverboy was rejected by the American record labels?
Well, a couple of the guys had their head so far up their ass they couldn't even see what time of day it was. I can remember Lenny Pizzi from Epic. He showed up in this hot nightclub in Vancouver in a full-length fur coat and didn't take it off. And we looked at him and went, what the fuck is this guy all about? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then, so that was fine. Years later, I ran into him at the Columbia year-end party in the Bahamas. They brought us down because we'd sold so many records. We were like Columbia Records, and Epic Records was a subsidiary of Columbia.
Right.
And Lenny Pizzi was at this thing, and we were celebrated as like the #1 selling band for Columbia that year, which is a big deal.
Right.
So we did a show down by the pool, and we're celebrating. On the way back, I walked by Lenny Pizzi's room. He had his door open for people to come in and, mingle. And I went, "Hey, Lenny, how'd you like the band? How'd you like the show from the bar band you passed on?" And I just, I did it with the smile on my face.
Right.
And I just saw him go like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I bet there was a lot of that going on.
He would have been a hero. Yeah, we got passed up by a lot of bands. I remember Paul and I walked into Capitol Records in Los Angeles with the demo tape. Oh, we were pretty ballsy because the demo tape was a 2-track. Some of it was even recorded on cassette. And and they were just songs from our warehouse, rehearsal warehouse, you know?
Right.
And we played it for I don't know how we even got I don't even know how we got a meeting with Capitol, but we got a meeting with Capitol and played them this stuff, and they kind of, it just probably sounded shitty. I mean, but I was hoping that, I said, we know these aren't going to sound good, but we just want you to hear the tunes, right?
Right. Get an idea.
And then that we didn't hear back from them, you know?
Yeah.
I thought of Capitol because of the Beatles, right? And then
sure.
I was just, we were dreaming, we were trying hard, and then we just kept doing that. And our management at the time invited bands to see us in different showcases in the Vancouver area. There's some nightclubs and really fun places to play. And people would pass and we'd be rejected. We'd feel lousy. We'd go back to rehearsing, and then we'd write some more songs. And then one night we were playing a place called the Body Shop, which was the hottest club in town, and packed because we had a bit of a reputation by then. And the guy walked in, he was from Columbia Records in Toronto. And he walked in and he says, "This place is packed." And somebody said, "Loverboy's playing. We go wherever they go." And this guy went, "Whoa." He told us this after the fact. His name was Jeff Burns. And that night he offered us a deal to go in the recording studio and cut a record. And we just flipped. We just went crazy. We just went, "Wow, this is going to be so great."
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was.
And we cut the first record in like 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, all mixed and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. That was back when you just walked in and let her rip.
Yeah.
Which is the way I like to record, actually.
Yeah.
Everybody just let her rip, words and all.
Thinking about, your difficulty, getting signed, there's been so many great bands come out of Canada that were influential to me when I was a young guy. Steppenwolf, Guess Who, Rush, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Triumph, of course, you guys. But
do you remember
Neil Young, huh?
April Wine?
April Wine, absolutely. Neil Young. I love Neil Young's stuff,
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you guys were having that trouble getting signed, did you ever think about calling any of those guys up and going, "What the fuck is going on?"
Well, you know what? Our manager used to manage Bachman Turner Overdrive.
Oh, okay.
And Bachman Turner Overdrive decided to just kind of call it quits for a while.
Uh-huh.
So our manager was primed to find another band because he was in a position where he knew all the promoters in the United States and he knew all the record reps. And he used to say to these guys, and he made no bones about it, he goes, "You guys are fucking crazy not to sign these guys." And he was a really high energy guy.
Right.
He'd say, "You got to sign these guys." And then they said, no, our manager, his name was Bruce Allen. He says, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to get you a deal. You're going to get a deal." And he really wanted us to do a U.S. deal just because of the fact that there's way more people in the U.S. And
right.
if you sign a Canadian deal, the chances are you might not make it out of Canada, which is, it's just kind of logic. And a lot of bands in Canada didn't really make it out of Canada. I could name 7 of them. And they're great bands that should have been huge in the States, and they weren't. But we ended up selling so many records right off the bat that the United States just went, "That's our band." So they immediately opened the door for us and went, "We love you guys. Come on down."
Yeah.
It was kind of like you just almost felt like saying, "Fuck off." But
right.
it was it was the big deal, and we got to meet the president of Columbia Records in the big New York office and go out to dinner with the president and hang around, and it was pretty cool, pretty exciting times. I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying it took a while for us to get there, but we got there.
Let's talk for a minute about your albums, okay? And what I'd like for you to do is just tell me something real quick but interesting about each one of them, okay? Just whatever comes to mind.
I better look my albums up. I said, I don't even remember.
I'll tell you what they are.
Oh, okay.
Okay. First of all, of course, your self-titled debut album, Loverboy.
Right. Well, you know, I think the first single off that record was "The Kid Is Hot Tonight." And I don't even know if we did a video for it, which is crazy. You'd think we would have done a video for that one, right?
Right.
But we didn't. And that's one of our biggest songs, even today.
Right.
The song that got the most interest and a video and everything was "Turn Me Loose."
So why don't you turn me loose? Turn me loose. Turn me loose.
Here's something that's interesting about the song "Turn Me Loose." At the time, Columbia Records was trying to not use the independent record promoters because there was a whole thing that they were asking for way too much money, and there was all this stuff about abuse from the record promoters and payola and all that stuff that was happening.
Right.
So Columbia Records decided to split from all the record promoters, the independent record promoters. And I remember they walked in one day to the president's office in New York, and they had a billboard, top 100 sheet pinned to the wall. And this guy had a set of darts. And he says, you're not gonna use independent promoters anymore. You guys are crazy. He says, I'll show you what's gonna happen. And he threw a dart at the board and it landed on "Turn Me Loose." And he says, that song's gonna go no higher. And he walked out of the room and it didn't. The song never moved. The song didn't make the top 40, and it's still our biggest song today.
Wow.
They stopped the single from getting past, I think it was 42 or something like that, and it didn't get into the top 40 because of that independent promoter. He went out of his way to make sure he was showing Columbia Records, teaching them a lesson. Yeah. And that's kind of a pretty serious story, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wow. What about your album, Get Lucky?
Well, we wrote a lot of those songs while we were on tour for the first album. Mm-hmm. And we were right off as soon as we got back, the first week we got back off tour. And the tour that year was with Kansas. We went right into the studio. The band was like a Spitfire. You could do no wrong. We played so many shows that we were on fire, and we went right into the studio and cut this record in record time, like 4 weeks, and just started pounding it out and making things happen. And it was fantastic. A lot of times when you're cutting a record, they run this kind of a click track, and the click track sound is like a cowbell. Gong, 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 and everybody gets the groove, and then they take the cowbell out of there, just so once the band's all in the same groove. Right. And then you record it a bunch of times, right? And sometimes when you listen back to it, the cowbell sticks on. I think halfway through the first listen, I think our drummer went, "Keep the cowbell in for the first little bit. It sounds great," right? This is kind of one of those. So that was a fluke, right? Yeah. And nowadays,
but it worked.
5:00 on Friday, and a lot of radio stations still, they like to play that cowbell song, Oh, yeah. So that's something that maybe a lot of people don't know.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. What about Keep It Up?
Keep It Up was a kind of a time in my life when I was starting to get a little exhausted. And so we were starting to look for outside songs to fill it in because the pace was getting too much. We just came back off tour, big selling record. I wanted some time alone. I just wanted to get off the tour bus kind of thing. Right. And I wasn't so keen on jumping back into the studio at that time. And so that album was a bit more of a strained situation for me. And I think we brought in a different producer and everything for that one. Maybe that was, no, I think we had the same team for that one. I should actually be looking at the album so I could tell you exactly what it's like. Name some songs off that one.
Dude, if you don't know, I damn sure am not going to know.
Keep It Up. Oh, I think This Could Be the Night was on there. And we just finished a tour with a whole North American tour with Journey. And Paul and I had this song, This Could Be the Night, for years, even before we recorded our first album. And it was a ballad, so we didn't play many ballads because we were trying to light a fire under everybody's ass, as a young band. So the ballads weren't that important to us. But I think somebody suggested we should put a ballad, especially after touring with Journey, because they had a lot of beautiful ballads, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so Paul ended up taking this song down to Jonathan Cain in San Francisco and said, Mike and I got the song, but we can't figure out what else to do with it. So Jonathan came up with some of the keyboard parts, and he was a major writer for Journey, and still is.
Right.
Then Paul brought it back with all these new ideas, and we went in and recorded it. That was a good moment I can remember about that album.
Right. And that was Keep It Up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 83.
83. Wow. I think we did an album every year. It was crazy.
Yeah, you did. And then there came in, I think, 85, loving every minute of it.
That's when we switched to a different producer.
Yeah.
Paul wanted to toughen the band up a bit now that we created something, which I thought was a bit odd, because we created something that was this way and Paul wanted it to be heavy. He was going through his heavy period.
Okay.
I'm his partner in the band, and I said, why do you want to be so heavy? And so he even went and got Judas Priest's producer.
Oh, wow.
From London to come to Vancouver.
That is
and
heavy.
He was a great, yeah. And I said, dude, and he was recording all this really heavy, and I'm going, whoa, where is that coming from? And he goes, I want to toughen this band up. And I'm going, you want to change what we are to that? And I just didn't agree with him. But it was really fun working with Tom.
Yeah.
He turned out to be a great guy, Tom Allen.
Right.
And he had a great saying after. Loverboy's always been a band that could record right off the floor and make it sound really good. I can say that because that's what we do. A lot of bands record, singly. They'd record a guitar, then a bass, and you know what I mean?
Right.
But we used to just record everything at once. And I remember Tom Allen was standing and he's got I think he had a scotch in his hand, and he's really enjoying us playing the song. And we go, how does it sound, Tom? And this is his famous quote, which I love to this day. In his English accent, he goes, change nothing immediately.
That's
goes,
awesome.
Come on, lad. Come on in, lads. Let's give it an euro. That's how let's give it a listen.
Yeah.
He was good. He was a good guy to hang out with for sure. And, we did our best job. And we ended up using a connection we had with our management company to ask, which is another good story. We asked, we wanted one more song for the album, and our manager, Bruce Allen, ended up asking Mutt Lange if he had any songs kicking around.
Wow.
And I think Mutt Lange had probably written the song for Def Leppard or something, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because that's who Def Leppard was using. And we loved the big Def Leppard sound. Was very cool, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and this was back, if you can imagine this, before things like internet and stuff, literally. So they couldn't send us the song. So Mutt Lange played us the song. He was in his studio. He held the phone up to his speakers and played the song, his demo.
Right.
And we recorded it on a cassette, one of those things you do dictations on.
Right.
Little dictation recorder.
Micro cassette tape recorder. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we just played it down. And we said, well, this is pretty cool. And then we went in the studio and just started playing it. And then we did all these big vocals and we did all this stuff. And that was a fun thing. And then we ended up calling the album that because along the way, we like to get a little sassy with the names of our albums, like one's Get Lucky, one's Keep It Up.
Right.
And this one is Loving Every Minute of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were kind of going for the sassy album titles.
Is that what you call it in Canada, sassy?
Yeah, well, just kind of, just a little bit tongue-in-cheek type stuff, right?
It was great. Now, after Loving Every Minute of it, did you guys start to see a decline in popularity?
What happened around that time was music was starting to change, and you either changed with it or you got kind of left out. So we attempted to make some changes, and we actually did a whole album that got rejected by the record company. They said we want it to sound different than your other Loverboy records, so we cut another kind of record and sent it to them.
Right.
Said, well, this doesn't sound like Loverboy. And we said, what the fuck? You asked us for something that didn't sound like the other records, and now you're saying this doesn't sound like Loverboy. So we just said, okay. And then we went back to the drawing board, and we started coming up with stuff. And we started bringing in some outside writers to help us with lyrics and different things. We were trying to get a little bit more in touch with what was coming rather than what had been in the music scene. And this is also the same time the radio stations were starting to not play. This is before classic rock radio. So they decided right around this time to stop playing a lot of that kind of music and start playing all this different new stuff. And this is really, record companies dropped the ball, radio stations dropped the ball and decided not to play anything. And a lot of bands, like every one of those bands we talked about today,
Mm-hmm.
Cheap Trick, REO Speedwagon, everybody, Foreigner, they just stopped playing all that stuff. And that in turn created what we now know as classic rock radio.
Yeah.
Somebody saw a void and said, you can't stop playing Styx and REO Speedwagon and Foreigner and Kansas, and you can't stop playing that.
Right.
And so there was a bit of a break there. So during that break time, we gave an album, and the album they didn't spend any money promoting it. So it didn't great. So I guess it was a bit of a bad time for the band, because we thought maybe this might be a time to take a little time off and try to reestablish what was going on. And grunge was kind of creeping up from Seattle, right? It was starting to come in, and it was a tough game right then. And the radio basically stopped. So they created that. And that's when country music flourished.
Yeah.
Because when all these bands took some time off, the country guys stole all the road crews,
Yeah.
bought all the equipment.
Filled the void.
Yeah, they had lasers and all the stuff that we used to use, and lighting and lasers and big shows, and the country music flourished. But there was this void. And then right at the end of the void, classic rock radio started and gave everybody a chance to get back in it. The funny thing about classic rock is the songs they play got to be 25 years old or so. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if you write a song today that you think is the best song you've ever written, it's going to be hard to get on the radio. It's almost put us in a position where what's the point?
Right.
They're not playing. A little while back, I wrote a song with Jim Pederick from Survivor, which I thought was one of the best songs we've ever written. And it was so good, we sent it to the Top Gun people for the new Top Gun movie. Because it'd be perfect for that movie in our minds. And we recorded it and produced it and everything, sent it to them. We didn't even hear back from them. It's just like one of those times. And who knows, if that Top Gun comes out playing Beyonce, I'm going to puke.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, nothing against Beyonce. She's
Right.
You know what I mean? Top
Right.
Gun's, kind of a macho
Oh yeah.
jet. Let's get cracking with the rock and roll.
Right.
This song was perfect for it. It was called "Without a Bullet Being Fired,"
Oh wow.
which would be perfect
Oh yeah.
for Top Gun.
Yeah.
And it was just totally right in there with the whole thing, high
Right.
energy.
You get something for Iron Eagle too, right?
I did. It was just me, but I can barely remember those times. I went to LA I was doing something, recording in a studio, and somebody asked me if I would come up to their place and record a song for a movie. And I said, why not? What the hell? It was a pretty good song, I remember, but it wasn't the whole band. It was just me.
Okay. Well, and that's the same case for the one in Footloose, right?
Well, the one in Footloose, I was asked to do the song, and it's a duet, and they said, we'd like you to pick anybody that you want to sing this with. And immediately I just went, Ann Wilson from Heart. That's who I'd like to sing with.
Wow.
And I don't know if you guys know this, but Hart lived in Vancouver for 15 years.
Now they're from Seattle.
They are, but
Right.
it was during, there was a lot of, I think, a lot of friction in the armed forces. They wanted everybody to join in the registry. I think it was called, I can't remember what they call it anyways. So anyways, they wanted to get out of Dodge because they didn't want to go in the army and stuff. All the guys in the band.
Selective service.
Selective service was happening and you got picked.
Yeah.
And you just had no choice, right?
Right, right.
So to avoid that, I think that's pretty much why they came to Vancouver. Other than the fact the music scene here was pretty happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to go see Hart all the time. They were the band that played all the Led Zeppelin stuff, right?
Yeah.
They played it very, very well.
Yeah.
And they still do, right?
Yeah. Oh,
But-
yeah. They made Robert Plant cry in the Kennedy Center, didn't they?
Oh, right, yeah. They
Remember
do.
that?
Oh, they're great. I
Yeah.
go see them whenever I can. They're a fantastic band. So I just said that's who I'd like to sing it with. And it was one of those magic moments where we met in a studio in Chicago, a studio called Pierce Arrow, which used to be the building where they built those cars,
Mm-hmm. Right.
Pierce Arrow cars.
Right.
The producer was Keith Olsen, famous for doing all kinds of great stuff. And after a brief waiting period, it was for some reason Anne was late, but we waited and waited. And then when she came in, I just asked her if she wanted to drink or anything and relax a little bit, get to know each other because we hadn't met before. And then after about half an hour of just sitting beside in front of each other, there was a microphone set up. I said, do you know the song? And she says, yeah, I know the song. I said, do you want to give it a try? And she said, yeah. And they rolled it. And we stood up and sang it in the same mic facing each other. And Keith Olsen went, thank you. And then it was all over.
Wow.
One take. It was a magic time. Yeah.
Wow.
That
How
was
cool is that?
The magic time.
Yeah. Well, you've done some cool stuff, and your music is still, to this day, it's iconic for a lot of reasons. But I mean, you had, as I recall, commercial TV play.
Heck, I heard on the NFL, or I was watching football the other day, last week, the week before, and a lot of football on, which is great. Finally, we're doing something. And they're playing some of my songs at some of the football stadiums. I mean, there's no people in there, but you hear "Love It Every Minute of It," or you hear like "It Is Hot Tonight." The Seattle teams, winning and playing away, and it was kind of great to hear the stuff like that. People call me up and go, "They just played you on the NFL." It's like, thank you, that's great. And they did use us for a lot of commercials and TV stuff and movies. They're still using us. I signed a contract recently to do something for a couple of different new things. One was a movie, one was a TV show, all up and coming. So it's still happening, which is, we're very fortunate really for that to happen.
Keeps the checks coming in.
Nothing wrong with the old mailbox money.
No, I know. Hey,
We're off. It's been a long break here.
Oh,
It's
I know.
Mailbox money.
I know. Thank God you've got that. We've probably got about 30 more minutes. Do you want to keep going?
I got to take a leak.
Okay, go take a leak. I'm going to take one too. I'll meet you back here in a few minutes.
Fantastic.
BarsideJive.com.
The zoo gives you rock for the senses. Lows that evolve into highs that pierce. Feel the rock on 98. KZEW, Dallas, Fort Worth.